Welcome, everyone, to the MMA Happy Hour podcast. I am Kyle Anthony, your host for today. We are talking UFC 323, headlined by Dvalishvili and Peter Yan. We're going to be breaking down 4 plays here on the show today. Now, listen, we are coming off a profitable evening 2 weeks ago at UFC Qatar. Really good reads overall. Did have a couple units on Arman Tsarukyan inside the distance, as well as we did parlay Arman Tsarukyan and Volkan Ozdemir. We had Ozdemir by KO. We had a lot of plus money there, had some good reads. Nice profitable evening for clients. This weekend, I have a loaded slate for UFC 323. I mean, might be the most units I have placed on one event. I already have 4 plays in right now, a 5-unit play, do have a 3-unit, a couple 2 units, and we'll be adding to that. So might be looking at 6 or 7 client plays overall. I really love this card from a betting perspective. And if you want to get involved, check it out down below if you want to become a client. And with that being said, let's dive into the main event of the evening between Dvalishvili and Peter Yan. Now, you got Merab sitting around minus 450 on the comeback here. We've got Peter Yan plus 350. Now, this is a rematch from their fight back in 2023 where Merab pretty much dominated. He went out there, was able to outland Yan. He was able to get the takedowns, secure the wrestling, secure top control, and just found a lot of success. He outlanded Yan, doubling his significant strikes, 147 to 75. Also secured 11 takedowns on 49 attempts. And the 49 attempts, I'm sure as most of you know, is a UFC record. It just shows just how just unbelievable the cardio is for Dvalishvili. He 50-45 Yan, won every round, swept the board, just dominated overall. And you look at Merab, he is just a nightmare matchup for pretty much anybody. Has the best cardio in the UFC. He weaponizes it very well. And the thing about what he does is, he's going to keep pushing forward. But the thing about it is he doesn't really need to get every takedown. As we saw even against Yan, 49 takedown attempts, only secured 11 of them. But it's just keeping his opponent working, weaponizing that cardio, staying in your face, having that relentless pressure, the relentless wrestling, just keeping you working, pushing that pace. And that's how he does find a lot of success because he's able to smother pretty much the offense of the opponent. And that's just really something that's very difficult for many fighters to kind of come up with a game plan to say, hey, I need to defend these takedowns. How am I going to get my offense going? And they struggle with that because Merab is going to keep pushing forward. He's going to grind out rounds and he's just going to find success that way. Now, Yan on the other side here, Yan is a guy that has great striking. He's very technical, very sniper-like striking, very good counters. And all those things are, what he can do very well. The issue for me here, and I think this fight is pretty simple for me to kind of break down, is the issue for me here is really the fact that what's changed? What's really changed for Yan that he's going to find success? Is it that he's going to, stay on his feet the entire time? Is it is he going to knock out Merab? There's not many paths for me when I'm looking at this fight for Peter Yan, and you're trying to make value here on, the plus 350 line here for Yan. And it's very tough to kind of back that even though this line is slightly wide here, it's tough to back Yan, at this particular price here, because I think it's just, he's going to be forced on the back foot, right? He's going to be forced on that back foot. He's going to really struggle to find space. You got Yan, who is a guy who is a slow starter. We know what we're getting from him out of that. And, yes, they have fought prior. Is he going to come out there guns blazing? Is he going to be a little more aggressive? I kind of doubt it. I think that's a comfort zone really for Yan, where that's what he likes to do. And you've got Merab, who I think is a guy who's going to come forward. He's going to push forward early. He's going to push that pace, set the tone in that fight, stay in his face, force the action. And it's really going to force Yan to really be defensive. And that's the struggle with most of people that do fight Merab, is they're forced to be on the defensive and really struggle to find any offense really going because they're defending takedowns for most of each of the rounds. And Merab puts, a lot of opponents in a cycle. And I think that's what he's going to do here. He's going to put you in the cycle. He's going to pressure box, get in the face of his opponent, crash the pocket, look for a takedown. If he can get it, okay. If he can't, he's going to just rinse and repeat, and he's going to do the same thing. And that frustrates a lot of opponents. And that's at times, I think, where he can find successes, because opponents might get and I think even with Yan, we're going to get very frustrated where he can't get anything going. And that's where something can open up for him to find the finish. Now, I lean towards a finish here. Now, I know that there's a very high probability here that Merab banks enough rounds, wins on the judges' scorecards, but you're looking at that very chalked up here around the minus 230 for Merab by points here. So I do think there is value here in this fight. Merab inside the distance here, a very juicy plus 440 number here. I'm going with that. I think it's a good sprinkle spot here. I think there's value here. Merab has openly talked about wanting to finish Jan. Jan is not an easy guy to finish, but I think he wants to put a stamp on this fight. Now, obviously, we don't bet because of what a fighter says. A lot of times that really doesn't matter, but I do think he's hungry enough to get that finish. He's comfort level with Jan. I think he's going to find some openings, and I think he's going to find that finish here. So I do like Merab Dvalishvili by inside the distance at plus 440. The next one here we're going to talk about is going to be Alejandro Pantoja. He is minus 235 on the comeback here. We've got Joshua Van. He is plus 190. Now, this is, one thing we're looking at Peter Yan. Peter Yan. Alejandro Pantoja is the fact that he is one of the GOATs of the flyweight division. I mean, there is just absolutely no doubt what he has done. The body of work he has put out there, 8 straight victories, 4 title defenses. This will be his 5th title defense. He has looked absolutely dominating. And the one thing about it is he is 35 years old. And a lot of times you're looking at these lower weight classes, you start to get older. You can start to see guys start to slow down. You can see maybe cracks in them. Things start to happen there. And honestly, even going back, watching tape and watching, his past fights, it honestly looks like he's getting better, which is a scary thing for anybody in the division, but he consistently is looking like he's just getting better. He's getting sharper. I think his grappling is even getting better. His striking is absolutely getting better. And you're even seeing physical changes in him that maybe he's eating his Wheaties. Who knows? But he's looking in career best shape. And even the lead up to this fight, again, looking in absolutely fantastic shape. And that's not something we're used to seeing with a guy who's, sitting around 35 years old in a lower weight class. That's a lot to really take in. And Pantoja's not just a grappler. He's a guy that is just very well-rounded. He's going to be able to move forward, throw big strikes, land big strikes, mix in the takedowns, and just overwhelm opponents. And that's what he does very well. He's going to pressure. He's going to move forward. Now, Merab is a guy who, is the same thing. He's going to push forward. He's going to box. But the difference is that Pantoja has power in his hands, has very good striking, and he mixes it up very well with these takedowns. And he's got that very aggressive style where he's going to look to crash the pocket, stay in your face, work the striking, and he works the combinations very well. He'll throw the combinations and he'll tuck in the takedown behind it very well. Just as you're starting to get comfortable with, he's going to strike, he mixes it in very well. Just a very versatile attack overall. While Van is a solid boxer, very high volume. He's going to push that pace. He's going to stay in your face. At 24 years old, he really rose up the ranks pretty damn quickly where he's able to find a lot of success and absolutely earned this fight, earned this championship fight where he's just taking fight after fight after fight. And he's been able to find a lot of success doing that. Now, his career overall, he's kind of just getting started. Is the crazy part about this is that he's really just getting started. And, you look at him and he's even openly said this as well, is that, not long ago, this is like a couple of years ago, where he was saying, I didn't really train wrestling. It wasn't really something I was really getting into. Now I'm really diving into it and really trying to round out my skill set. So that shows that he's definitely behind when you're talking about wrestling, when you're talking about maybe the grappling is there, but the actual wrestling part of it might not be there for him. And that might be an opening here because he is a very, very raw talent. And I just feel at this particular spot, I think it's just, too much too soon here for Van. I think Van is definitely, this is not the last time he's going to see a title fight. He's going to see them throughout his career. At 24 years old, he's going to have many opportunities to build back up here. But I just think this is a bad spot because you got a guy who's primarily a boxer who wants to stay in the pocket, wants to throw. And if he's going to have an opponent that's going to throw, he's going to find success doing that. But the other part is that guys that have wanted to take him down have found success taking Van down. Now, yes, he's won some of these fights, but overall, the path, the door is open, I think, for Pantoja here. And you've got, Ray Cerrulla took him down 4 times. Cody Durden took him down twice. Felipe Bunez took him down twice. I mean, these are guys that, yes, he was beating some of these guys, but, Pantoja is going to go to that well. He knows it's available here. He knows it is a weakness. I don't think he stands and looks to box with Van. He's going to mix it in. Out of his last 5 fights for Pantoja, he's landed 29 takedowns. And I just think that's where this is going to be going here. And you've got, even in his most recent fight against Kai Kara-France, the big talking point in that fight was the fact, Kai Kara-France, 83% takedown defense, great boxing, sounds familiar here, doesn't it? And that's kind of where, hey, he's going to be able to defend. He's going to be able to, have the cleaner boxing, has some power in his hands. And, in the fight, Pantoja goes out there, lands 3 takedowns, submits him. So it really wasn't much of as much as it was touted. And I kind of think that's kind of how this kind of plays out. Or I think the mix of the power, the mix of the wrestling is going to be too much here for him. I think he's going to worry about the takedowns. I don't think he can really get into a flow state here. I think he's going to struggle. And again, I think this is just too much too soon for him. So I do like Pantoja here. But I do like Pantoja inside the distance as well here. I do think he gets the job done. You got Pantoja minus 235, but you get inside the distance sitting around plus 120. I like that number. I think Pantoja gets it done. I think the paths are there. I think he's going to grind it out. He's going to find that finish. So give me Alejandro Pantoja and still inside the distance at plus 120. And the next one here we're going to talk about is going to be Chris Duncan. He is minus 180 on the comeback here. We've got Terrence McKinney. He is plus 145. Now, this is the spot here where it's an absolute banger. This is just going to be for however long this fight lasts. I do think that this is a spot here where there's just going to be a car crash. It's going to be, both these guys are going to be swinging coming out the gate. You've got McKinney, 17 wins, all inside the distance. You've got Duncan, 14 wins, 10 inside the distance here. So there's a reason why fight to not go the distance is minus 2,000 and higher, is because they're expecting violence. The books are expecting violence. I think everyone watching this podcast is also expecting violence. Now, there's no doubt that McKinney is a glass cannon, and that's the big knock on him. The guy's got absolute ability. He just, his cardio, his durability, there are those issues that he does have. And that's why he's just a tough guy to trust, overall here. And early in the fights, he's explosive. He's got power. He's got finishing upside. He's going to move forward. He wants the chaos. He wants to throw. And that's where, again, he's going to find the success if he can land the shot, if he can get the takedowns. And really, he's a great hammer, a bad nail. If he can't get that finish, things can start to really go badly for him very quickly. And he's a killer be killed kind of fighter. And again, that's what makes him very difficult to get behind, monetarily speaking, on certain spots. Now, Duncan, on the other side here, I'm just not high on Duncan, especially when you're talking about a minus 180 number here. And, actually, even a side note here, the Duncan team reached out to me. This is probably going back last year, probably beginning of last year, where even last year and the year prior, I was having a lot of fighters on, which I'm going to do more of in 2026. Had a lot of fighters on the last couple of years, Johnny Walker, Sadiq Youssef, Ariane Lipsky, Miranda Maverick, Yusuf Zalal. I had a lot of guys on. So they ended up reaching out to me. We kind of had a conversation. And the funny part was they were looking for like a payment. If they were like, hey, if we're gonna do an interview, they were looking for a payment. They were saying, for a social media post, a shout out, they were looking for a payment. Fight camp updates, they were looking for a payment. They were like, are you interested in any of this? I was like, no, not at all. Anyway, that was just a thought that just came to my mind because it was very interesting to reach out. But anyway, overall, I am not high on Chris Duncan. Now, besides his slick guillotine that he has, you stick your head in the wrong spot, this guy's absolutely going to latch something in, choke you out, find those opportunities. He's very opportunistic with those submission game. But besides for that, I really look at this and, I just think he's very basic. I don't think there's anything ultra special really about him, especially when we're talking about a minus 180, price tag here. He's got, basic striking. I think his wrestling is like, okay. And again, he can really look for some submissions, but he's very hittable in the pocket, leaves his chin up. His chin's always there to be hit. And yes, he's on a 3-fight win streak, but I think he is just way overperformed and overachieved over those 3 fights. Even in some of those fights, like Balaji Oki, he was losing the exchanges. It was like 30 strikes for Balaji and 10 for Duncan. Yes, Duncan found the finish, but there's points where, that can't really stand, because you're about to face a guy in McKinney who is an ultra hard hitter. Now, besides for the cardio and the durability issues for McKinney, McKinney's better everywhere. I just really he's a better striker, faster hands, harder hitter, more explosive, better athlete. There's all these things that really, tie in well. I think he's a great, better wrestler. I think there's just a lot of things that he does do. And Duncan's the guy who's going to block punches with his face. Again, McKinney's a very hard hitter. And I just really don't think that Duncan has the ability to really stand and strike with McKinney, especially early. And that's where McKinney does most of his damage. And, Duncan is a guy who, again, does have that opportunistic submission game. I don't really think that McKinney is going to, look for takedowns or unless he's in trouble or something kind of like that, he's going to shoot. But I think the game plan here is going to be staying on the feet, is going to be let's strike, let's box, because I don't think he wants to wrestle and get into that part of it. I think that McKinney can look to land the bigger shots, look to land the power, have that power advantage here. And I just think Duncan's there to be hit. And out of McKinney's 8 KO wins, all of them come inside the first round. And where I'm going with this here is that, I'm actually going to add in the second round, because I'm going to take Terrence McKinney by KO inside the first 2 rounds. And that's sitting around plus 390, plus 400, depending where you're shopping it. I like that price tag here. Again, if everyone's expecting a car crash here, and you can now talk about getting a 4-1 on a guy that pretty much is just going to look for that knockout for the most part here. And again, I don't think this plays out on the ground. I think it plays out on the feet. So give me Terrence McKinney by KO inside the first 2 rounds, plus 390. And the last one here we're going to talk about is going to be Taira. He is minus 125. On the comeback here, we've got Brandon Moreno. He is plus 105. I said minus 125, right? That's all right. You can see on the screen. Anyway, we got Taira versus Brandon Moreno here. And the winner here is probably going to be fighting for a title here, which makes this really interesting. I would like to see Taira, just as a fan, because I think it's going to be an interesting matchup, or whoever wins in the title fight there. But you've got the former champion in Moreno. You've got the rising, young, contender in Taira, who is really just, a guy that a lot of people have kind of pegged as the guy to, kind of be the next champion, next title challenger, because of just his skill set, how young he is and how he consistently looks to be getting better. And I think this is an extremely, extremely interesting stylistic matchup here. Now, there are advantages here for Moreno, where you're looking at Moreno, this guy gonna be the better striker. There's no doubt. He's has more experience. Definitely fought the higher level strength of schedule. Obviously, guys that he has fought over his career, talking about multiple title fights, high level guys, and he's been around and he's done great throughout that time. He's durable and he's tough. So there are a lot, again, things that he does have. Now, although he is coming off a victory over Steve Erceg, going back watching that tape, I didn't like what I saw. Now, I know that's not, coming off a victory. Maybe that's, not the normal thing to say, but, I just didn't like it. The first thing is I'm not high on Erceg. I've been betting against Erceg the last few fights. I just don't think he's that good. And I think he was kind of rushed up. And I just don't really think he's that good. Even with that being said, he still outlanded, Moreno. But I thought overall, Moreno looked slower. I thought the combinations were developing really slow. I thought his movement was a little bit slower. I think you're seeing regression starting to happen for Moreno. And, he's got the name value there. We know he's a high level guy, he's been around, but, I just don't really think you're going to get the best version, of Moreno, where I do think it's going to be the best version of Taira coming in to Saturday night. And I do think the MMA mileage that Moreno has had over his career could be catching up with him finally. There was even a couple fights ago where we were talking, hey, this guy, he might be done. He might be washed. He ends up getting a couple victories. And now we're talking, hey, is he back? I don't think so. I really think there's great value here on Taira. And, Taira now is entering his prime. He's starting to really build up. And I think that also we're looking at is the fact that, he's making improvements. As young as he is, he's making improvements. And plus, One thing I think that we definitely know here is the fact that Taira is going to be the better grappler. I think that this fight hits the ground, he's going to have a massive advantage. He's going to be able to, just the way that he rolls with transitions, he's flowing, he's always finding opportunities to get the body lock, he gets to the back very quickly, and a lot of things that he does do well. Now, the striking side of things, I think a lot of people think it's really favoring Moreno, and I don't think so. I think that the grappling is a massive advantage there for Taira, but I think the striking is very, very close. And I think, again, that's how this opens up a lot of opportunities here in the striking, mixing in the grappling for Taira overall. I do think the takedown threat is going to kind of slow down Moreno a little bit, being a little bit more timid in the pocket, allowing Taira to kind of move forward, throw combinations, look to level change, mix it up a little bit. And I do think if this fight hits the mat, one time it hits the mat and he starts to find opportunities, there could be a chance here where he banks the round, wins positionally. And that's kind of how I think this kind of plays out here. Now, if this is a 5-round fight, I think I would very much start to rethink this a little bit here, because I think Moreno, we know that over his last however many fights, he's had 5-rounders, title fights. We know this guy's got endless cardio. He's proven it. He continually can push out volume, those kinds of things. But, and we've seen Taira, who is kind of slowed down. We saw him against Royval, where as the fight started going on, he really started to wear out, really started to slow down. And that could be an issue here. But I do think 3-rounder really, really, is an advantage there for Taira to find success, look for takedowns. And I do think that's how this plays out here. So I don't know if there's going to be a finish here, but I do like Taira to get the job done here at -125. I don't think it's a bad price, and I think he gets the job done. So there you have it for my plays for UFC 323. If you want to become a client, link down in the description. And also, if you do not have a Caesars Sportsbook account, link down below. You open up an account, bet $1, get 20 profit boosts up to $25 each. An awesome, awesome offer to our sponsors at Caesars Sportsbook. So with that being said, we've got one more event left in 2025. Let's catch it this weekend. Let's get the job done next weekend. Let's enjoy that vacation into 2026. So let's get the job done and let's cash.